Hey y'all, Jay Nice on the mic. So today I wanted to start something a little bit different on my channel. So I want to start something called the 2020 Grow and Glow. The focus of this Grow and Glow series is to really dive into career and professional development. I get a lot of questions on my social media pages about professional development, professional growth. And I thought it would be a really good idea to create this 2020 Grow and Glow series to really focus on some of these questions that I've been asked. I really just want to bring value to people, and I feel like when I was on my journey, there were a lot of questions that I had that I didn't know who to ask and who to turn to. So I really want this 2020 Grow and Glow series to help you professionally. And be sure, if you have any questions, to leave them in the comment section below if you have specific questions about professional or career growth and development. So for today's video, I wanted to address a question that I get often. So for those of you who don't know, I am a diversity and inclusion consultant. So what that means is that companies will hire me to come in and do keynote speeches, do workshops, and do different talks on diversity and inclusion. I've been doing this formally for a year now, and I've been doing it informally for the last couple of years. So I would say the last 2 to 3 years. So I get questions frequently when I'm at speaking engagements and when I do talks or do workshops. And also for my students, I get questions about like, how do I get into diversity and inclusion? If I want to become a diversity and inclusion consultant like you and do like inclusion workshops, what do I have to do? So the focus of this video is ways that you can get into diversity and inclusion consulting. So I want to point out that you do not need any sort of formal education to become a diversity and inclusion consultant, although it does help a lot. So many of you know this already, but I have a PhD in organizational psychology, and I think that that helped me to get the theoretical base and background of diversity and inclusion. So I understand it from a research perspective, but I don't think it was absolutely necessary for me to get my PhD for me to practice diversity and inclusion consulting. I was under the impression that I did need my PhD before people would really take me seriously, because I tend to look younger than I actually am. So I think I worried that I would come into organizations and managers would sort of look at me and be like, what does this 21-year-old girl know about consulting? So I felt like that PhD would give me the credibility that I was seeking. But now that I'm like a few years removed from my PhD, it's been 2 years now since my graduation and since I got my PhD, I realized that I didn't need to get a PhD, but it does definitely help. So I would say, I just wanted to put that out there. You don't need a PhD, but it helps. The first thing I would say is figure out like what specific area of diversity and inclusion you want to get into, because diversity and inclusion is very vast. There are different areas. Figure out what your specialties are going to be. Are you going to focus on race and racial equity? Are you going to focus on LGBTQIA plus issues? Are you going to focus on gender equity? Are you going to focus on cultural competency and fostering a more culturally understanding workplace? So there's so many different areas of diversity and inclusion that you can focus on. And I think that in order to be successful, you really have to figure out what specific area of diversity and inclusion you're going to focus on, and then think about what your skills are. Are you really good at giving talks and speeches? And so I've been thinking about creating, which I probably will do, a video on how to get paid speaking opportunities, because this is a question that I get sometimes. So you have to think about where your strengths lie. Are you a really good speaker? Are you really good at data analysis? Because you could create and design surveys for organizations and then assess and analyze the surveys and then tell the organization basically what the survey results mean. So you could do that. You could give keynote talks. You could do workshops. So I would say figure out what areas of diversity and inclusion you would be, really good at and what your focus is going to be. And then think about what specifically are you going to be doing? Are you going to be doing workshops? Are you going to be doing trainings and all of that? And then research and think about, what sorts of activities are effective in trainings. And there's Harvard Business Review has so much data and so much really well-researched information that can help you as you're looking into like what sorts of activities or services you can offer. So I think that would be good. I do guest blogging because I really enjoy writing. And so sometimes I'm asked to do guest blogging, but speaking is really like what I focus on and workshops. So I think you need to really flesh out like what specific services that you are going to offer. And then the next thing I would say that's really, really critical and important is establishing a network. I make it a point to host these free events called the Diversity Dinner Dialogue, where I just invite people in specific cities to come out and talk about a specific diversity and inclusion related issue that their company is facing. So I think that, throwing yourself into a network of diversity and inclusion professionals will help you to learn a lot. I learn so much when I host these events. And so I would say making sure you network, and Eventbrite is a great resource for looking up events that are being held related to diversity and inclusion. I would also suggest Meetup. There should be definitely meetup groups within your city that focus on diversity and inclusion. Also, look for opportunities within your workplace to take on diversity and inclusion related activities. If you work in HR, you could design a diversity and inclusion survey, and you can ask your manager if you can administer the survey or dispense it to the workplace. You could create a diversity and inclusion training or workshop for your organization. So I would suggest figuring out ways to sort of infuse diversity and inclusion into your current role, wherever it is that you work. And another thing that I would do is that I would also look for opportunities, free, unpaid opportunities to really talk about diversity and inclusion. Years ago, I would give, and I still do now, I do like panels and speaking engagements. And I typically tend to charge, but I do free speaking engagements where I talk about specific areas of diversity and inclusion that I feel like I've studied and I've researched and I have value that I can bring to an audience. So I would say that taking advantage of any opportunity you can to really talk about diversity and inclusion or to do diversity and inclusion related work within your organization can be a really good way to get your feet wet and figure out like, is this something that I really want to do? Because what may happen is you get your feet wet and you get some experience doing diversity and inclusion related work and you realize this is not what I want to do. So that's a possibility as well. So I would say look for every and any opportunity to speak on specific diversity and inclusion related topics. Visit podcasts. If you have an opportunity to speak on podcasts, that's also a really good opportunity to sort of get yourself into the industry. If you enjoy writing, I would also suggest creating content around diversity and inclusion, making sure you're on LinkedIn and you're connecting with diversity and inclusion professionals within your city. So those are some ways that I would suggest you getting into the diversity and inclusion industry, if that's an industry that you're interested in. So if you look in the description box below, I will number and list all of these ways that I discussed in the video. If you have any other questions related to this topic, please leave them in the comment section below. If you found this video helpful, please hit the thumbs up button, and also share with your network. And also don't forget to subscribe if you are a new visitor here. So that concludes this video. I will see you guys in the next video.